Hello, my name is Sabne Raznik, and this is the channel here on YouTube where I do what I call mini readings, which is usually just one reading, one poem. Usually my work or someone else. Here lately I've been doing a lot of someone else's because I've been trying to get a good variety of things on the channel from all over the world because I just love world poetry. And that's one of the reasons why I've never monetized this channel, so that I could do that without breaching copyright laws. Because I believe that you should always see things in context, and context means everybody, the whole world over. And it's cold this evening. It's pretty near the end of November. Got all my heaters on, so I'm nice and cozy in here. Got my bourbon in my plastic cup because I have cerebral palsy and I'm spastic, so I know it's better out of a glass, but it's better to have it in a plastic cup than bust the cup in your face. Believe me, I've done that, spasmed and shattered the glass right in my face. And after that, I kind of went on a purge to get rid of anything, almost everything in my house that is glass, especially if it was thin glass. You do what you gotta do. I usually don't drink all that much in one go, but it'll take me several hours to drink that. I'm a slow drinker, and it'll help me sleep tonight. It'll help with relaxing my muscles, which is also a CP thing. Sometimes it helps more than the muscle relaxers, because they don't always work. But anyway, I'm going to read you a Wallace Stevens poem this evening. This is the book I'm reading it out of. I believe it's his collected, the collected poems of Wallace Stevens. And I've been reading this over the course of the last year, and as you can see, I'm getting close to the last of it. And I just thought he's not talked about much lately, but when I was growing up, 80s and early 90s, Wallace Stevens was considered one of the giants in the previous generation of poetry. And so I thought, since he's not talked about much lately, probably because in some of his poems he reflects the views of his time. We have to always look at things in historical context, that we can't judge the present we can't judge the past by the present, because in that case we will always misunderstand it. You have to have it in context. But anyway, I thought that since he's not much discussed anymore, it would be a good time to bring out one of his works on my channel and kind of be like, don't forget Wallace Stevens, y'all. Because at one time he was one of the most celebrated poets in the English language. And so I thought I would read, I'm not going to read his most famous poem, his most anthologized one, but it's a good one. The Auroras of Autumn is what it's called. And this is how it goes. The Auroras of Autumn. This is where the serpent lives, the bodiless. His head is air beneath his tip at night, eyes open and fix on us in every sky. Or is this another wiggling out of the egg, another image at the end of the cave, another bodiless for the body's slow? This is where the serpent lives, this is his nest, these fields, these hills, these tended distances, and the pines above and along and beside the sea. This is form gulping after formlessness, skin flashing to wished-for disappearances, and the serpent body flashing without the skin. This is the height emerging, and its base. These lights may finally attain a pole, and in the midmost midnight, and find the serpent there. I feel like I added a word there. This is the height emerging in its base. These lights may finally attain a pole in the midmost midnight and find the serpent there. In another nest, the master of the maze of body and air and forms and images, relentlessly in possession of happiness. This is his poison, that we should disbelieve even that. His meditations in the ferns, when he moved so slightly to make sure of sun, made us no less assured. We saw in his head, black beaded on the rock, the flaked animal, the moving grass, the Indian in his glade. Farewell to an idea. A cabin stands deserted on a beach. It is white, as by a custom, or according to an ancestral theme, or as a consequence of an infinite course. The flowers against the wall are white, a little dried, a kind of mark trying to remind of a white that was different. Something else, last year or before, not the white of an aging afternoon. Whether fresher or duller, whether fresher or duller, whether of winter cloud or of winter sky, from horizon to horizon, the wind is blowing the sand across the floor. Here, being visible is being white, is being the solid of white. The accomplishment of an extremist is an exercise. The season changes. A cold wind chills the beach. Long lines of it grow longer, endure. A darkness gathers, though it does not fall, and the whiteness grows less vivid on the wall. The man who is walking turns blankly on the sand. He observes how the north is always enlarging the change, with its frigid brilliances, its blue-red sweeps and gusts of great enkindlings, its poplar green, the color of ice and fire and solitude. Farewell to an idea. The mother's face, the purpose of the poem, fills the room. They are together here, and it is warm. With none of the prescience of oncoming dreams, it is evening. The house is evening, half dissolved. Only the half they can never possess remains, still starred. It is the mother they possess who gives transparence to their present peace. She makes that gentler than can gentle be, and yet she too is dissolved. She is destroyed. She gives transparence, but she has grown old. The necklace is a carving, not a kiss. The soft hands are a motion, not a touch. The house will crumble and the books will burn. They are at ease in a shelter of the mind, and the house is of the mind, and they and time together, all together. Boreal night will look like frost as it approaches them, and to the mother as she falls asleep, and as they say good night. Upstairs the windows will be lighted, not the rooms. A wind will spread its windy grandeurs round and knock like a rifle butt against the door. The wind will command them with invincible sound. Farewell to an idea. The cancellings, the negations are never final. The father sits in space, wherever he sits, of bleak regard, as one that is strong in the bushes of his eyes. He says no to no and yes to yes. He says yes to no, and in saying yes, he says farewell. He measures the velocities of change. He leaps from heaven to heaven more rapidly than bad angels leap from heaven to hell in flames. Now he sits in quiet and green a day. He assumes the great speeds of space and flutters them from cloud to cloudless, cloudless to keen air. No, cloudless to cloudless to keen clear. In flights of eye and ear, the highest eye and the lowest ear, the deep ear that discerns, at evening things that attend it until it hears. The supernatural preludes of its own. See, this is why I have the bourbon. Because my muscles are so upset tonight that I don't even have control of my own mouth. Bear with me, we'll get through this, and I hope you still enjoy it. Okay. The supernatural preludes of its own. At the moment when the angelic eye defines its actors approaching in company in their masks. Master, O Master, seated by the fire and yet in space and motionless and yet of motion, the ever-brightening origin, profound, and yet the king, And yet the crown, look at this present throne, what company and mass can choir it with the naked wind? The mother invites humanity to her house and table. The father fetches tellers of tales and musicians who muse much on the tales. The father fetches negresses to dance among the children like curious ripenesses of pattern and the dances ripening. For these the musicians make insidious tones, clawing the sing-song of their instruments. The children laugh and jangle a tiddy-tum. The father fetches pageants out of air, scenes of the theater, vistas and blocks of woods, and curtains like a naive pretense of sleep. Among these the musicians strike the instinctive poem. The father fetches his unherded herds of barbarous tongue, slavered and panting halves of breath, obedient to his trumpet's touch. This then is Chantillan, or as you please. We stand in the tumult of a festival. What festival? This loud, disordered mooch? These hospitaliers? These brute-like guests? These musicians dubbing at a tragedy? A dub, which is made up of this, that there are no lines to speak, there is no play, or the persons act merely by being here. It is a theater floating through the clouds, itself a cloud, although of misted rock, and mountains running like water, wave on wave, through waves of light. It is of cloud transformed to cloud transformed again idly, the way a season changes color to no end, except the lavishing of itself in change, as light changes yellow into gold, and gold into its opal elements, and fire's delight splashed wise because it likes magnificence and the solemn pleasures of magnificent space. The cloud drifts idly through half-thought of forms. The theater is filled with flying birds, wild wedges as of a volcano smoke, palmade and vanishing, a web in a corridor or massive portico. A capitol, it may be, is emerging or has just collapsed. The denouement has to be postponed. This is nothing until in a single man contained. Nothing until this named thing nameless Nothing until this named thing nameless is and is destroyed. He opens the door of his house on flames. The scholar of one candle sees an arctic effulgence flaring on the frame of everything he is, and he feels afraid. Is there an imagination that sits enthroned, as grim as it is benevolent, the just and the unjust, which in the midst of summer stops to imagine winter? When the leaves are dead, does it take its place in the north and enfold itself, goat leaper crystalled and luminous, sitting in highest night? And do these heavens adorn and proclaim it, the white creator of black, jetted by extinguishings, even of planets as may be, even of earth, even of sight in snow, except as needed by way of majesty, in the sky as crown and diamond Kabbalah? It leaps through us, through all our heavens leaps, extinguishing our planets one by one, leaving of where we were and looked, of where we knew each other and of each other thought, a shivering residue, chilled and forgone, except for that crown and mystical Kabbalah, but it dare not leap by chance in its own dark. It must change from destiny to slight caprice, and thus its jetted tragedy, its stele, or stele, I've heard that said different ways. Those things, that they dig up in archaeology that have the things written on it, not the cuneiform tablets, but they actually stand up. That's what it means. It's stele. And shape and mournful making move to find what must unmake it, and at last what can say. A flippant communication under the moon. There may always be a time of innocence. There is never a place, or if there is no time, if it is not a thing of time nor of place, existing in the idea of it alone, in the sense against calamity, it is not less real. For the oldest and coldest philosopher, there is, or may be, a time of innocence as pure principle. Its nature is its end, that it should be and yet not be a thing that pinches the pity of the pitiful man, like a book at evening, beautiful but untrue. Like a book on rising, beautiful and true. It is like a thing of ether that exists almost as predicate. But it exists. It exists. It is visible. It is. It is. So then, these lights are not a spell of light, a saying out of a cloud, but innocence. An innocence of the earth and no false sign or symbol of malice. That we partake thereof, lie down like children in this holiness. As if awake we lie in the quiet of sleep, as if the innocent mother sang in the dark of the room and on an accordion, half heard, created the time and place in which we breathed, and of each other thought, in the idiom of the work, in the idiom of an innocent earth, not of the enigma of the guilty dream. We were as Danes in Denmark all day long, and we knew each other well. I added a word. We were as Danes in Denmark all day long and knew each other well, hell-hearted landsmen from whom the outlandish was another day of the week, queerer than Sunday. We thought alike, and that made brothers of us in a home in which we fed on being brothers, fed and fattened as on a decorous honeycomb. This drama that we live, we lay sticky with sleep. This sense of the activity of fate, the rendezvous when she came alone, by her coming became a freedom of the two, an isolation which only the two could share. Shall we be found hanging in the trees next spring? Of what disaster is this the imminence? Bare limbs, bare trees, and a wind as sharp as salt. The stars are putting on their glittering belts. They throw around their shoulders cloaks that flash like a great shadow's last embellishment. It may come tomorrow in the simplest word, almost as part of innocence, almost as the tenderest and truest part. An unhappy people in a happy world. Read, Rabbi, the phrases of this difference. An unhappy people in an unhappy world. Here are too many mirrors for misery. A happy people in an unhappy world it cannot be. There's nothing there to roll on the expressive tongue, the finding fang. A happy people in a happy world. Bafoo! A ball, an opera, a bar. Turn back to where we were when we began. An unhappy people in a happy world. Now solemnize the secret of syllables. Read to the congregation for today and for tomorrow this extremity, this contrivance of the spectre of the spheres, contriving balance, to contrive a whole. The vital, the never-failing genius, fulfilling his meditations great and small, and these unhappy he meditates a whole, the full of fortune and the full of fate, as if he lived all lives that he might know in Hall Harridan, not hushful paradise, to a haggling of wind and weather by these lights like a blaze of summer straw in winter's neck. So that's the whole poem, and thank you for bearing with me while I struggled with my muscles wanting to do their own thing, and that's just part of my condition. It seems to get It seems to get worse with age, like everything else. But I can't complain, because in terms of CP, I'm really very, 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 very fortunate. So, and I hope you enjoyed that. I really do. I should have worn this shirt in my last video, the one where I did the Langston Hughes poem, because it's When Love Comes to Town, I'm going to jump that train, B.B. King. But, all right. Well, feel free to browse back through the channel to see what other poems there are, and it subscribe, hit that bell so you'll get notifications, because I don't upload on a schedule. I just don't. But I do occasionally put up something new that you might be interested in. I hope you enjoy your evening and that you're as cozy as I am. I'm going to get off here and start working on my selected poems in new, which is why I said, it takes me a few hours to drink all that, because I plan on having a late night tonight. You guys have a good night, and thank you.